everybody. Today we have Dr. Phoebe Robertson joining us, and I want to say thank you for joining us, I guess.
Thanks for having me.
I think to kind of start things off, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, that kind of thing?
Sure thing. Yeah, I'm a bit of a unique one on campus, I guess. As far as how far I've come, certainly not the farthest faculty member, but definitely not originally from here. I was born in Toronto, Canada, and I grew up in eastern Canada, in Sackville, New Brunswick, on the border between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Beautiful place. I often tell people I think there might be more lobsters than people. But gorgeous place, lovely people, and a great place to have grown up, both academically and musically. My parents still live there. I get to go back quite often. I really loved school growing up. I really loved writing and public speaking and performing and dancing, and I found a love for flute playing at the age of 12 and ended up at the University of Ottawa in Canada's capital when I was doing my undergrad. And had a wonderful experience there for my undergraduate years. Learned a lot that I really tried to bring to my job here at Tech in terms of how I go about teaching my students. I had wonderful mentors there, and I was really lucky with that part of my journey.
Very good. So I think the next thing I'm kind of interested in knowing is, talk us through where you went to school as far as your undergraduate degree, and then kind of walk us through your path as far as your educational preparation.
Yeah, so I come from a pretty academic family. My dad has a PhD. My grandma, who recently passed away, had a PhD in classics as well. She actually was my dad's mother-in-law, but she hooded him. She wasn't his advisor, but she got special permission. Sure. They both have PhDs in classics. I have bunch of uncles who work at universities. I have some cousins who work at universities, so we're just all going up several generations. We're university people, and I was at my dad's PhD graduation ceremony wearing what I called a congratulation dress that my mom made for me. So the university atmosphere was really no stranger to me. I got calls from the fine arts department chair when I was 4 while I was sitting in my dad's office because he was scared that I was sitting too close to the window. So that was kind of, I did my homework during my dad's office hours growing up, and I would just go and bug the undergrad students, and they would be really nice and kind of shoo me away. And what are you working on? I'm translating Greek. Go away. Yeah. But being around the music department at the university was something I was doing from the time I was 6, 7 onward. Went to church with a bunch of professors, so I knew them personally as well as my dad's colleagues. And I really loved the environment. I really didn't know anything different from being a professor's kid, and it was a university town, so my social circle was pretty much all profs kids who had come from away, as we say, and who were making a home there. So the smaller regional campus sort of atmosphere was something that I was really familiar with. Professor life was something I was really familiar with, and my parents both really instilled in me this passion for asking questions and digging deeper into things. And so I hit kind of a crisis point. I remember really distinctly coming back from my first semester of undergrad, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I was having a great time. I felt like I was really thriving. I found a great friend group, and I was like, I love music history, and I love playing the flute, and I'm freaking out because I'm going to have to pick between the two someday, and I don't want to. And I still remember crying in my bedroom over this, as if this was the the biggest crisis anyone had ever faced. And I'm pretty sure my parents were like, "Oh my goodness, child, just eat your Christmas dinner." And I a couple months later, we had a guest artist who teaches at Memorial University in Newfoundland, who was a former student of my flute professor at the University of Ottawa, Michelle Jeremy. She came in, and she had a doctorate of musical arts degree. And so she was teaching her areas of specialty, which were flute and music theory, at Memorial University in Newfoundland. And it was like the clouds had parted, and I thought, oh my goodness, I found the thing where I can dig into writing a dissertation, and I can do things that really interest me, and I can keep active as a performer. And so pretty much from that moment onward, at the age of 18, I just knew I was that was the route I wanted to pursue more than anything else. I was okay if there were, changes along the way, but I kind of found my North Star. And so going into a master's program, I was aware that the top priority initially was going to be to become the best flute player I possibly could with the resources I had, first and foremost, and then to continue to find ways to hone my academic research skills as part of that. You can do a doctorate of musical arts degree most readily if you have a master's degree in performance.
Okay.
And so I pursued a master's degree at Carnegie Mellon University, which is a bit of a flute mecca. It's a really fantastic program. Jeannie Baxtresser, who's one of the goddesses of the flute world, had just retired from there, and I got to study with Lorna McGee, who is one of the current icons of the flute world. And that was just an incredible time to be mentored by her and Alberto Almarza, who teaches there. And they really gave me the opportunity to dig into my research skills as well as my performance skills, and to have really phenomenal opportunities traveling the world and performing at huge concert halls in Europe during those 2 years. It was an incredible experience. Going onward from there, I knew I was going to pursue a doctorate of musical arts, and I wanted to go right away into that. I had an idea of what I wanted my dissertation to be in, and so I pursued that education at Manhattan School of Music in New York. And I was under Linda Chessis and Robert Langevin's guidance for the flute side of things, and then Edward Green's guidance on the academic advising, dissertation advising side of things. He has a really interesting blend of scholarly interests that include Soviet Russia, which is the topic of my dissertation, post-Soviet flute concertos, and so that's how I ended up there. Now, a few months, half a year or so into that, we had this little thing called the pandemic that showed up and that changed things pretty significantly. And on the one side, it was obviously a really difficult time for everyone. At the same time, I had basically no social life for a year and a half, which meant that I could really crank out some good work on my dissertation. I was actually in a duet with a very good friend of mine. We still play together really often, and he had just finished his doctorate. And he was saying, I'm weirdly jealous of you because you can actually use this time really effectively. The challenge was getting sources in and getting them across the border and all of this stuff. But as soon as I could figure all of that part out, that things lifted a little bit and I could actually get access to the literature I needed, honestly, it was a really great situation to be in, because I just was living between home and coffee shops, getting the dissertation written and doing the rest of the correspondence by email and things like that. So I did my comprehensives during that year, which was a really strange experience. Doing that in my childhood bedroom was not something I ever expected. My parents' dog actually peeked his head in at one point while I was doing my oral comprehensives. Yeah. So life is funny sometimes. And I ended up back in New York for my final year of my DMA. At which point I finished up my dissertation and got to finally go back to conference life and all of those things that we kind of all, I think, took for granted prior to COVID, and then we're all really grateful for once all those restrictions started to get lifted and we could actually, not just see someone present on a screen, but actually see them present in real life. One scholar was at a conference in England said, do you know what the point of conferences is? To me, and I said, I thought, I'm supposed to give a good answer to this, and the right answer, and so I said, well, it's to meet scholars and it's to hear fascinating research. And he said, no, the point is the part where we all go get coffee and chit chat. Right. And we missed that for a year and a half. Absolutely, yeah. And he was absolutely right. Sweet Norwegian gentleman who had retired years ago, but just was coming to these things to network, and so. That really was sort of my lead up to then going on the academic job market.
So, and I'd have to agree with your friend is, and not that I go as often as I wish I could, but it's those I would call it the coffee and beer chat. So it's coffee in the morning and then beer after the conference is over, right? But
that's the dream.
Some of those conversations that spark the projects or the topics or the collaborations, the discussions and the presentations are valuable too. I don't want to downplay that, but there is something special about being at a table and having some of that informal, meandering conversations.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Canada, New York, Arkansas.
Yeah.
So how did you end up at Arkansas Tech? How did this transition happen?
Yeah, so as I was sort of gearing up for the academic job market, I kept saying to people, I would love a job that allows me to teach flute, to perform, to do research, and to teach music history. And a bunch of people said, yeah, I'd like a unicorn as well, but you know, good luck with that. And those sorts of jobs don't exist in the same way in Canada. There are many phenomenal flute jobs, but they tend to be really closely associated with the orchestra that's most close by. And I, at a certain point, started to explore the possibility of not playing in an orchestra and instead really focusing more of my attention on the research and teaching side of things. And so, leading up to coming and interviewing, I had really been looking specifically for jobs that allowed me to have one foot in the classroom and one foot in the flute studio, as we say. And this job came up, and my whole life, because my dad's trajectory was one of moving from Toronto to Sackville, New Brunswick when I was 3, I had always just really understood that you go where the job is. If it's the right job for you, and if it's people you want to work with, then you will. I remember my dad saying, people create centers of excellence wherever they are. And so he always just told me it doesn't matter where it is. If it's the right place for you, then it'll be the right place for you. And so he said, don't be picky. Don't be picky when it comes to the actual day-to-day job of it, but don't limit yourself to just being open to living in New England. Don't limit yourself to just being open to living on the coasts, for instance, unless that's really the top priority for you. But the top priority for me was to have this job with these sort of dual roles. And so I saw this job come up and was thrilled, because that's basically what it was advertising, was someone who enjoyed being in the classroom and someone who really enjoyed teaching and performing in the community and connecting with schools. And throughout the interview process, both the virtual interview and the live interview, I really connected with my future colleagues. I felt like we were on the same page in terms of what we wanted, in terms of the types of students that we were interested in working with, in terms of the mission of the music department and the mission of the university to really elevate students' lot in life, as our president likes to say, really help students who may or may not have a lot of experience in academia going back several generations the way I do, but who are really new to this whole university thing, but who have a passion for it and who really have a strong why behind their day-to-day. And I really felt like the students and I were resonating with one another, and this was a great place to be. And I particularly loved hearing my future colleagues perform, and I got the chance to collaborate with Tim Smith, who I still enjoy performing with often on piano, and I thought, he's an incredible collaborator. I'd love to play with him. I'd listened to some recordings that the Wind Ensemble had put out, and I thought, this is great. I love what Dr. Blanche is doing with the bands, and so all of that just came together, and it felt like the right place for me, and so I was thrilled to get offered the job and to make the move. And another thing is the natural landscape of Arkansas reminds me a lot of where I grew up, and I distinctly remember landing in Little Rock. I'd never been to Arkansas before, getting picked up at the airport and driving along the interstate and thinking, yeah, no, this looks like home. Like, I understand this place in a way because I grew up in a rural farming community, and that had a university in it. I mean, there are some differences. There are a lot of similarities as well, and I felt like I understood kind of how the town ticked in a way, and could, of course, everywhere's a little different, and there've been all sorts of things that I've learned, but there's been enough similarity that I've really felt like I could make it home pretty quickly.
Yeah, something you spoke of, that I find dear to. I mean, I know there's other institutions that have this as well, but the social mobility aspect of it for students is, I'm a first-generation student. My father didn't even graduate high school, and so there's something special about that with the students here, and in seeing their growth, through the academic program, but also just their growth in general. And the aha moments and whatnot.
We get a lot of one-on-one with the students in the music department, through the nature of how lessons work, but also we just end up being quite tight-knit. We go on trips together, things like that, and so it's a lot of fun. These last couple of days, students have been coming in to do defenses for their term papers for me, so the juniors have been coming to meet with me, and it's been really fun to chat with them about some of those aha moments they've had throughout the semester. I had one yesterday who said, I went to a concert last weekend with the Arkansas Symphony, and I felt like I could actually really enjoy it differently than I would have previously. I would have enjoyed it at this level, and I was able to go a little bit deeper and enjoy it at this level. And I thought, okay, if that student has a love for music and then feels like they can have even deeper of a love for music, then I'm doing my job. At the end of the day, I feel like I did something worth writing home about. So
absolutely.
That made me feel really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we got to move on. I think there's a lot of those moments, those aha moments, that I think those are our proudest moments. And when we think about students that we connect with and seeing that, it just has a special place in our heart.
Absolutely.
So here at Arkansas Tech, and I think I speak for a large swath of folks in saying we're glad you chose Arkansas Tech.
That's kind of you.
So talk to us a little bit about your program as far as the courses you teach at the undergrad and grad level.
Absolutely, yeah. So coming in, I have had the really great fortune to be able to be part of the music history curriculum, which is part of our students, both in the Bachelor of Musical Arts and Bachelor of Arts in Music and the Bachelor of Music Education. It's part of their progress. So they take that, historically they've taken that at the junior and senior level. We're now shifting it over so they get even more experience a little bit earlier in the degree, which is really exciting. So right now I'm teaching music history to the sophomores for the first time, and that's been a lot of fun. And what we do in music history, we also call it musicology, which sounds like a science, and it is. I mean, I guess in a way, in the ancient definition. Music history is the study of how music and society intersect. So, music and politics, music and innovation in the world. What does the Enlightenment have to do with music? What does religion have to do with music? And oftentimes the subjects that are being discussed are a lot bigger than just looking at a pretty melody, but actually looking at the life circumstances of a composer and things like that really, to me, open up a whole new world of understanding that people who have been in the creative arts have always just been humans. And what I really enjoy talking about with students is the moments where they understand that a composer who lived 400 years ago understood a breakup just as well as they do. Understood what it was to lose a loved one just as well as they do. And they expressed it through art. And I think for a lot of students, at least for my experience as a student, was that made me feel less alone. And that made me feel like I could connect with music in a different way. And that made me understand what I was being asked to play, sometimes against my will, in a different way. And then in addition to teaching the music history curriculum, I get to teach the flute studio. So I teach lessons to students who have declared a major in flute performance as part of their Bachelor of Musical Arts or Bachelor of Music Education or Bachelor of Arts in Music, and so they get the chance to perform in recitals and as part of ensembles, and they perform a senior recital at the end of their degree. And then in addition, I coach some chamber music, and that's all at the undergraduate level. At the graduate level, I have taught flute, particularly to students who didn't major in flute in their undergrad.
Okay.
So I teach, for example, last semester I taught a euphonium major from his undergrad here at Arkansas Tech, who has been basically thrust into teaching a lot of flute in his position that he has now, and so wanted to hone those skills. And so that was an exciting opportunity to say, okay, here are some things you understand about your main instrument, here are some ways that you can apply that knowledge, but also here are some ways that teaching flute is very different. And that was a really rewarding experience. And then last semester I also taught the inaugural course of our Master's of Music Education degree, which is offered fully online. So it was an online asynchronous course in topics in music history, and we talked specifically about the intersection of music and culture in the 20th century as it pertains to the music that a lot of these current educators, because almost everyone who is in the program has a full-time job and is doing this alongside their full-time job, we had assignments where they were writing on the content that they were currently covering with their students. So it was a way to, on the job, just-in-time training type of thing,
Sure.
Reinforce what they were doing with their students and hopefully allow them to gain some of those additional skills, to dig even deeper. Like I said, just taking things from 10 feet deep to 11 feet deep. If that's what gets accomplished in a semester, then that's exciting, or even more. And so it's been really exciting to be part of that journey. I've also in the past taught courses for the Honors College. I taught the seminar for freshmen. So that was basically like a critical thinking 101 type of situation, which was really exciting and a lot of fun to talk about intersectionality in terms of interdisciplinarity. So trying to help students understand that just because they're an engineering major, they need the visual arts, and nursing majors need computer science, and everyone should appreciate one another's contributions to the university. That's something I'm really excited about. I'm probably jumping the gun here, but that's something I really enjoy about the research symposium that we're doing in a week and a half. Yeah, that's hard to believe. That's something I really enjoy, is that students get to experience one another's research regardless of what department they're in, and so hopefully they can appreciate one another's efforts even more and all the thought that goes into all these different departments on campus.
Sure, yeah. And I think that that's also probably a perfect segue to talk about, I know that you recently had a recital.
I did.
And you have some other performances and more coming up. So I guess share a little bit about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So a week and a half ago or so, Dr. Corey Fika, who was hired this year, this is his first year on campus as professor of percussion, he and I presented a duet recital. We had a lot of fun. We played some really exciting stuff, including a piece by Phil Parker, who was his predecessor, who was professor of percussion here for 46 years, if I'm getting that right. Incredible composer, and this piece I actually knew of before I even knew about Arkansas Tech. I had heard of this piece, and so he was on my hiring committee, and I said, "Are you the Phil Parker who wrote Beneath the Canopy?" And he said, "Yes." And I think maybe I got his vote in that moment.
Whatever it takes, right?
Yeah. I didn't mean to, manipulate anything. I just got really excited because I knew that piece. So we got to play his work, which was a lot of fun. And then Dr. Fika and I also just secured a grant through the College of Arts and Humanities to commission a colleague of his, Carolina Calvache, who is a composer based in San Francisco. They went to school together in Miami. She's going to write us a piece, and we're going to premiere that, we're hoping, in November of this year. So really exciting for Arkansas Tech to get to lead a consortium. We do a lot of that with the bands and the choir, but we haven't done as much of it in terms of the chamber music, the smaller group side of things. So it's exciting to get to lead a consortium and get to put a call out for people to join that. And then also in about a week and a half, I've got a recital coming up with several artists from Arkansas Tech, as well as a guest artist from UALR. We've got Dr. Park coming in from UALR, and she and I are going to play a piece by Schubert called The Introduction and Variations on Trockene Blumen, which is a song by Schubert that Dr. Porter from our vocal department is going to perform with Dr. Park. And then Dr. Smith and I are also going to perform a work by Dr. Trevor Frost, who's our interim associate director of bands and a wonderful composer. So lots of exciting stuff coming up, staying busy.
And I know that I want to ask, before we close out, I want to ask about some advice for students, but you did mention the research symposium. Mm-hmm. So I guess real quick, how do you view the, what's the benefit for a student as far as their involvement in that?
I loved participating in things like this as an undergraduate. It was an opportunity to get a bit of what felt like real world experience. It was sort of a way to dip my toe into academia in a really friendly way, and certainly I hope that that's the experience our students have with this. We get the chance to share not only the format of a really a professional conference scenario with them, with posters and with oral presentations, but also we get the opportunity for them to get some feedback from professors from a variety of disciplines, and I think that that's a really precious thing that they get to engage in, and I really encourage students, maybe who didn't get the chance this time around, I encourage students to start thinking about it for next year, because it's a really wonderful thing that we're really proud of and we really enjoy putting on.
Sure, no, absolutely, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
We've only got a few more minutes,
Yeah.
so to last question, and it's like the power round. If there's a student, maybe in high school, or maybe a freshman or so on campus that is looking to do a similar career path that you have taken, or they're looking to get maybe something similar in some manner, what kind of advice would you give that person?
That's a great question. So many things, and every student's so different. So if I were to take a bird's eye view, I think, and I say this as a professor, so I try not to say this sounding full of myself, but professors are your greatest asset on campus. I think students often figure out a little bit too late how much they should be relying on their professors, and I think sometimes that's a regret that students have, that they don't plug in quite as much. We really want to support students. We want to provide students with the best experience. Yes, we're responsible for giving grades. That's a surface level part of our job, and it's a part of our job that honestly I don't love, because it feels like I boil down a student's effort to the sum of a number of points, which is a necessary part of what we do. But more than anything, I love mentoring students, and I wish that more students really plugged into that and actually asked for some advice, some ideas. I know many of my colleagues and I really just clung to mentors we had who were doing what we wanted to do, and just said, how do I become you? How do I follow your path? And certainly we've all made mistakes and we've all had successes, and so we can at least share some of those things. And so the most rewarding conversations I have with students are along those lines. Here's what I want to do, what do I need to do to get there? Those are conversations I'm happy to have any hour of the day, frankly.
Yeah,
when it comes to the music side of things, that we have so many students from across campus who aren't music majors, who participate in our ensembles, who go on tour with us, who record CDs. We have students who are in the marching band and who have that be a really important part of their social life. And so I would just say, you were mentioning, a lot of people say get involved on this series, and so I'm just going to echo that because it's good advice. Get involved, get plugged in. Music is a great way to keep social connections as well as to make art together.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Phoebe Robertson.